You're listening to Tailspin. I'm Melanie. This episode is called Thank You. Our story contributors are Luis Ramirez, Heather Clisby, and Kelsey Stewart. For our music, we're going straight up country with Ponderosa Aces. And now, Luis Ramirez.
My mom uprooted us from Mexico and brought us to the United States on her own. Huge, brave moment in her life. Not knowing the language, not knowing the customs, not knowing anything. To this day, my mom is my hero. She raised 2 boys in a decent way. Mind you, living in Long Beach, in West Long Beach in the 1980s, and both boys never have been in a gang. My mom raised us right, so I'm really thankful for her. But by the same token, a lot of my demons come from when we grew up. Well, after so many years of my mom having to be the mom and the dad, she finally met my dad. Now, mind you, this is my dad. By law, he's my stepfather, but this is my dad. He finally decided to move us somewhere else into our own home. So we moved from Long Beach to Montclair. Everybody got their own bedroom. Everybody's awesome. Everything was great. Everything was going fine. But I guess the pressure of my mom having to quit work and my dad being the only paycheck coming in eventually took its toll in our daily lives. We've never had that much money, which really didn't matter to any of us, my brother or me. We were very grateful for what we had. We used to get, say, $20 allowance, and we would save it. And we would buy somebody else their birthday presents or Christmas presents with that money. Once in a while, we would splurge on ourselves. Well, anyway, I joined high school band, and we were going to Six Flags. And this is in the time when my dad was between jobs. I begged, and they allowed me to go. Well, I got $20. And they told me, well, don't spend this money. This is emergency only. I'm like, okay, no problem. So off to Six Flags we go. Well, I didn't realize that lunch and dinner were not included, but I didn't spend the money. I kept those $20. But I wanted to show my gratitude to my parents because this was a big deal. You know, this is senior trip, and I get to go to Six Flags. So my parents were very hard smokers and very hard coffee drinkers. So I figured, hey, you know what? They got this little 2-cup set that said greatest dad and best mom in this what looked like a little wishing well kind of enclosure. And luckily enough, I had enough money to get it. Now, make a decision, Louis. Eat or take this to mom and dad. Well, finally, I brought it home on the same night. It was gift wrapped, and first thing out of the blue when I got there, not how was your trip, not how did you have fun, where's the $20? Well, Mom, here, look, I got this for you. I got a 2-hour lecture on how we don't have any money, how we can't spend it, how irresponsible, how they told me not to spend this money. And I got browbeaten to the point where I didn't say a word the whole time, and I just dropped the package on the bed and walked away. I think that was the first time that I actually kind of cried. And I cried for a good couple hours. The next morning I wake up and I see my gift unwrapped, and it's on top of their dresser in their bedroom. Not a word was spoken. Nothing was said. This topic was never touched again, ever. Well, over the years, every time I went to take a shower, because you have to pass by that dresser and that gift in order to get to their shower, Every day I looked at it, and every day I kind of half cussed at it and half said, you know what? It was my present to them, and I'm grateful. Let's leave it at that and move on. Finally, I moved out of the house, and I kind of forgot all about it because I didn't, out of sight, out of mind. Well, my dad recently passed away about 2 years ago. Because my dad passed away, my mom got rid of a lot of things. And when I went to try to help her with the house, I noticed that set was gone. And she saw me looking for it, but she didn't mention anything. All right, well, it is what it is. I had to help my mom with the funeral arrangements and picking out the casket and getting everything ready. So we were going from Montclair all the way to Riverside because my dad, being the military Army vet, Green Beret, he got a military funeral, and thank God, because that helped us a lot. Out of the blue, she decided to open up and just say, you remember that coffee set you got us for your trip to Six Flags? I go, yeah. And mind you, at this point, I'm boiling inside. I'm ready to explode, but I just shut my mouth and listen to her. And she goes, well, I never did thank you for it. Your dad and I were going through a really rough time financially, and we really couldn't afford to give you the $20. And we did rip you a new one that night. And when you went to bed, we finally opened it up, and we saw what you brought, and we realized that what you did, we were so embarrassed that we couldn't say anything to you. That's when I turned to my mom and said, you realize for the last 20 years, this has been an emotional burden on me, and it's basically eaten me alive. And she said, we know, and I am really, really sorry. So that drive home after taking care of my dad's funeral arrangements, that was the first therapy that I had regarding that memento. And after that, it's never been brought up again. But that's where I realized that raising my 4-year-old daughter, that I have to think twice, speak once, let her talk the whole way through, and deeply listen to her, regardless of what she's doing, what she's done, or what she will do. And to always say I love you, and to immediately apologize when I do something wrong. Because again, my demons are my demons, not hers.
What will we do with the time we share? I tell you, baby, that it's not fair. You say that we're just having fun, but it means so much to me. You know you mean so much to me. Sometimes I wonder if you even care, if I'm gone or I'm still there. I'll have a drink to forget about you. You're stuck on my mind. You're always stuck on my mind. Your body and your face and every
was Ponderosa Aces with Make Things Right. That's from their most recent album, Honky Tonkin' My Life Away. If you want to hear more of their music, you can check out their website at ponderosaaces.com. And now, Heather Clisby with Alan McLaren.
Okay, so I'm in high school and probably about 10th grade, 11th grade, and it's right around February, and it's about the time when you have President's Day, Lincoln birthday, Washington birthday, all that stuff. My friend Lisa and I were having a discussion about how only famous men get celebrated. What about the average Joe? What about the guy that just does his job, that just pays his taxes and raises his family, and doesn't get into trouble, and doesn't get any attention? What about that guy? Why doesn't he get a holiday? Why doesn't he get some special recognition? We were brainstorming this idea, and we decided to come up with a holiday dedicated to the average Joe, the guy that you never hear about or see. And we're walking down the hallways, and a guy walks by, and we realize we don't know who he is. We've never seen him before. He's kind of a short guy, blonde hair, a little surfer boy. And we realize we don't know who he is at all, which is unusual because we're busybodies and we know everybody. And we walk up to him. I said, "Excuse me, what's your name?" He looks terrified because we are these big, blustery, very social girls, and he's a very quiet, shy boy. He says, "My name's Alan." I said, Alan, what's your last name?" "McLaren." Alan McLaren. Okay, I like it. Are you on any sports teams? No, I'm not on any sports teams. Are you in any groups, social groups at all? No. What's your grade point average? I don't know. C, I guess. You have any hobbies? No hobbies. You got a girlfriend? No girlfriend. So I look at Lisa. I said, "What do you think?" Now, she's the graphics person. She's into art. She still, to this day, is a graphic designer. I am the communications person. I'm the woman that goes out into the field, spreads the word, gets the excitement going. So, "Lisa, what do you think?" "Alan McLaren." She said, Alan McLaren, I think we can use it. Thank you. That'd be all. Thank you very much." We dismissed Alan into the population and then set about creating a huge campaign. I don't know where we got the energy for this. We created a huge campaign. We picked a day, March 26th, and we declared it Alan McLaren Day. We made ribbons, we made posters, we made buttons. We snuck something into the announcement, the daily announcement they did for the school. And we came up, slogans, "Have you hugged your Alan McLaren today?" It went on, just purely for our own entertainment. And it got to be so big that a lot of the teachers wore buttons. Mrs. Howard, who was this notoriously grumpy typing teacher, even wore a T-shirt that said, "Have you hugged your Alan McLaren today?" It was massive. It was a huge success. People got into it. They got behind the whole average person you never see thing. Not only did we do it that year, we did it 4 more years of Alan McLaren Day, March 26th. So 10 years goes by. I'm at the high school reunion, and a guy comes up to me. I recognize him immediately. It's Alan McLaren. We hug, we laugh, we remember fondly his holiday. He said, "Hold on, I got to go get somebody." He goes, he grabs his wife, who's lovely, brings her over. He said, "Honey, this woman and her friend Lisa changed my life." Now, that's because Alan was so shy, I never actually heard his version of this holiday and how it affected his life. So now that he, at this point, was a 28-year-old happily married man, he told his wife about what we did and how it had changed his entire high school experience. He said, "I would go to parties, and normally I would either be ignored or bullied or, just generally overlooked. The same guys, the football players, the jocks, all those people, I would walk in, they're like, 'Alan McLaren.' They would create a throne for me. They would bring me beer. girls would want to hit on me and ask me to the prom. I mean, it just went on and on and on. People in my neighborhood would bring food over. You know, it'd be like 5 years after high school, and I went to write a check in the grocery store, and the lady said, Al McLaren, aren't you a celebrity or something? It just went on. And he said, it gave me so much confidence that you guys just plucked me out of nowhere and decided to create this holiday. He said, I was walking down the street maybe 3 years ago, and I saw somebody wearing an Alan McLaren t-shirt. And it just blew my mind. And so, you know, to this day, every March 26th, Lisa and I still exchange cards wishing you the very best Al McLaren Day. So the next time March 26th comes up, please lift a glass and toast the average Joe.
This is Kelsey Stewart with Thank You, Mr. Keeler.
Earlier this year, I found myself standing in the shower with a heavy feeling in my chest. That feeling where you know tears are about to start flowing any second. And then I just felt utterly ridiculous, as I realized the feeling was coming on so strong because I had just listened to a news story about how Garrison Keeler, the longtime host of the radio show A Prairie Home Companion, would be retiring this year and handing the show over to a new, younger host. I was surprised at how emotional this news made me. Sure, I still listen to the show on Sundays when it airs on public radio, but I certainly don't catch the show every week or have a poster of Garrison pinned to my bedroom wall. But I have always loved Mr. Keeler's way of being equal parts comforting nostalgia and relatable progressivism. His tales from Lake Wobegon were always my favorite part of the show. And that's when I realized, standing in the shower that day, ready to break down and cry, that I needed to tell Mr. Keeler what he meant to me. So I decided to write him a letter, a bona fide paper letter that I put into an actual envelope and stuck an actual stamp to and dropped in an actual mailbox. At the age of 34, it was the first fan letter I have ever written. And, like most fan minutiae, I blather on about myself for most of the letter. But ultimately, I just needed to say thank you to him. Here is that letter. Dear Mr. Keeler, your voice was a big part of my childhood, and that's just one of many reasons I continue to bring your voice into my home and car when I listen to A Prairie Home Companion on our local station, KPCC, here in Southern California. Since this is the year you will be passing the baton over to Mr. Thiele, I figured it was high time I said my gratitudes, because you, your voice, and your stories have meant more to me than I ever realized. In 1988, when I was 6 years old, my parents separated, with my two older brothers having graduated high school and moved out to start their own lives. My mom decided to move the two of us from our family home in Long Beach up to a small town in the mountains called Lake Arrowhead. She always said she chose it for the highly rated school district and the clean air. Now I see how she also desperately needed a change, and 5,000 feet in elevation seemed like a good place to start. My dad continued to live in Los Angeles, working in the television industry as a technical director on sitcoms. For the 10 years that followed, until I was old enough to drive on my own, I was ferried back and forth between one home in the mountains to another down in the big city. Every weekend, my mom would make the hour-long trek to meet my dad, who drove an hour-long trek of his own, to meet at their agreed-upon halfway point. I will always remember the name of that freeway exit, Green River Drive. It was a small commercial oasis of gas and food off the bleak beige stretch of the 91 freeway, where the words green and river are not the first images conjured in the mind. And yet, what a poetic title for our meeting place on neutral ground. The three of us would usually share a lunch at one of the chain restaurants off Green River Drive, a tuna sandwich and a 7-Up, some friendly conversation about how I was doing in school, and then I would kiss my mom goodbye and climb into my dad's car for the second leg of the journey. I don't remember ever feeling sad or weird about this routine. My parents never spoke an unkind word about each other in front of me, and they were simply doing their best to move forward, even though that weekly drive was probably something they didn't necessarily enjoy doing. For me, those drives were the perfect transition from mom world to dad world and then back again. My mom and I would descend from the pine trees, snaking along the narrow switchback highway in her blue Honda hatchback that was defined by the smell of Carmex lip balm and juicy fruit gum, and the feeling of a little plastic snow scraper rolling around at my feet, and KT Oslin and Bonnie Raitt coming through the speakers, and my mom's winter boots with the good traction pumping on the brake pedal. Then I'd be on the congested freeways headed to the city in my dad's champagne-colored Porsche, with the smell of leather and Banaka and stacks of tapes for editing rattling in the back seat, and Dire Straits and Steve Winwood coming through the speakers, and my dad's worn-out Birkenstock sandals pressing on the gas pedal. While those drives meant learning the many differences between these two people who loved me dearly but had grown into two very separate individuals, those drives also meant discovering the little artifacts of what once made them a couple in love. They both had southern roots and loved sliced tomatoes with just a little salt and pepper sprinkled on top. And they both had a devil of a sweet tooth. They were both transplants from the East Coast living a plane ride away from their own families. They were both secretly artistic creatures and not so secretly progressive thinkers. However, the one little artifact they still shared in common that made the biggest impression on me during those drives was the box of Lake Wobegon cassette tapes that could be found in the center console of both of their cars. Switching from one car to the other meant not always hearing the end or beginning of each tape, or even getting to hear them in order, but that never mattered. What mattered was hearing my mom and dad laugh at the same subtle insights and charming self-deprecation of those stories. It meant hearing the sound of two people who maybe weren't altogether changed. Those tapes, those stories, and your voice were like a little thread that kept these two starkly contrasting worlds linked together for me. I've always defined my parents as completely separate entities in my mind. They divorced when I was very young, so I never really knew them as husband and wife. To this day, it's hard for me to picture them ever having been married, let alone married for over 20 years. While I never wished for them to be together again, there will always be a little part of me that feels comforted by the thought that there was once a time when these two people really were in love, that they had nicknames for each other and packed suitcases for the same vacations and signed leases together and picked out sofas and bought each other jewelry and caught each other's colds and loved the same 3 children more than anything in the whole world. Even through all the changes that led to their eventual separation, they could still laugh at the same stories and characters packed away in those cardboard cassette sleeves with the little painting of a quaint town on the top. And I could laugh right along with them, both of them. That shared laughter meant we were still, and always would be, a family. Thank you for that, Mr. Keeler. And thank you for all of your years of wit and charm and storytelling and music. I can't wait to hear more. Sincerely, Kelsey Stewart. In a sweet turn of events, several months after I put that letter in the mail, I learned that Garrison would be recording his final broadcast of the show at the Hollywood Bowl, just an hour away from my home. My dad got us tickets, and we went to the show together. It was a perfect way to say goodbye. In my opinion, Garrison Keeler perfected the craft of waxing poetically about the utter smallness of human existence and how heavy a weight that smallness is to bear. One of the songs Mr. Keeler sang to us that night at the Hollywood Bowl was an Iris DeMint tune called My Life. So, in a nod of reverence to a man who spent years serenading us with a voice that isn't exactly perfect, I will sing the chorus of that song. I can give comfort to my friends when they're hurting, and I can make it seem better for a while. And for fans like me, over these past 4 decades, he really did make it seem better for a while.
That was Kelsey Stewart, Making Me All Weepy. I'd like to thank Kelsey and Ponderosa Aces, Luis Ramirez, and Heather Clisby for their contributions. I also want to remind you that I want your contribution. I want your story. I want your music. So contact me through my Facebook page, Tailspin. I'm on Instagram now, moving on up, Tailspin Stories, my website, melaniehiller.com. Remember, without you, there's no story.
Keep your eyes focused on the beautiful, ever-changing